Okay, here we go. And let me admit all other folks. Okay, welcome to the new season of Fullfunnel B2B Marketing podcast. And today, our first guest is Darrell Alfonso, who is running global operations at Amazon. And Darrell is one of the speakers at our upcoming Fullfunnel Summit. So the reason I invited Darrell is that we all see lots of customer frictions. And personally, from being 15 years in B2B marketing and sales, I have seen that many companies are deliberately complicating their marketing and sales processes. Lots of them are using obsolete marketing tactics like, long inquiry forms that doesn't book a meeting with a sales rep. So you see just a thank you message. Somebody from our team will reach you out as soon as possible. 8 fields, contact form to sign up for the webinar, endless sales qualification, fake urgency, newsletter subscribers or ebook downloaders that are presented as sales qualified leads. We have all been there wearing these shoes. And today we want to chat about how these companies are creating customer friction at every stage of the funnel and how to fix this situation. So first of all, Darrell, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andre. So great to be here.
So I want to kick out the conversation with one question. What are the most typical customer friction points the majority of B2B organizations have?
So there's 2 big areas of friction that I think we need to take a look at on a regular basis. One is external customers, right? And all of the touch points that they experience in their buyer's journey. But we also can't forget the friction for our internal customers. And that's for our salespeople, our marketers, even customer success when they're trying to serve the customer and trying to create value for the customer. So that's the way that I first approach it is looking at external customers and then internal customers. And before we really dive in to, hey, what are the key places that we should remove friction? I do want to preface this by saying that, I think you have to really make good judgment calls when you're doing this. Not all friction is bad. Okay. If you're putting in friction to protect the customer or to raise the quality for the customer, like here's a common example. If a salesperson calls a prospect and they have no background information on who that person is, what company that person works for, or what the person's background, what they're interested in, and they just hop on the phone and say, oh, hello, tell me about your life and everything, tell me about your backstory. I did no research. Well, that's not good. The friction of doing your research and arming yourself with the intelligence to have an effective conversation with a prospect, that's fine. Okay. So there are areas like that we need to think about. That's actually good friction. Okay. Now that I've said that, I do believe that most of the friction that we experience today, you mentioned it, Andre, is really, really bad. One really big example that I remember when I was trying to get information on this ABM product, account-based marketing. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I got was, it was a sales development representative. And he asked me a list of questions for almost 20 minutes about my use case, what I was looking for, what I was looking to do. And then they scheduled they scheduled a call with me with the account executive, salesperson. And then when I got on the phone with this person, they asked me the same list of 20 questions, right? And even by the end of that call, I still didn't see a demo or got any information on pricing, you know? And what happened with that situation is that company put their people first or their process first and not the customer first. And I'll never forget that, you know, to this day, when I hear that company's name, and I'm not going to drag anybody through the mud today, but when I hear that company's name, I kind of cringe a little bit. I'm just like, oh, that company, you know, what do they know about account-based marketing? That they're doing really terrible, you know, sales and customer engagement practices. So I just wanted to that I think that's an example of unnecessary friction within the sales and marketing process.
And I have two examples that are very similar to what you have shared. I don't know if you are talking about the same company, but there was a funny example as I was looking for, let's say, a partner for direct mail campaigns in the United States. And I reached out on behalf of Fullfunnel.io, on behalf of my company, but I was looking for a vendor that will help to execute the campaigns for our clients. And it was really funny. I was disqualified because they checked Fullfunnel.io and they said, you are running a very small organization, so sorry, you're a bad fit for us. So they didn't have any idea that we are a marketing agency, that we are actually we are serving their target audience. That was crazy. And another example, there is one leading sales enablement solution in Europe that is expanding their business in the United States and Canada. And we knew the founders, and the founders, we wanted to sign up a partnership agreement with them and basically resell their software to our clients, getting some exclusive price and etc. So everybody in the executive team was super happy about this partnership, and they referred us to head of sales. And the guy told, okay, so every time you'll have a new customer for us, you won't be able to have a demo. So you need to reach out to local sales rep, and for every big market in Europe, they have own sales rep, and you need to negotiate the deal with the local sales rep. So that was a funny fact. We have had 3 clients, one in Netherlands, one in Belgium, and one in France. And we needed to reach out to 3 different sales reps that were literally qualifying us with all these questions. And at the end of the day, they told, okay, so if your clients are not willing to immediately invest, let's say, in annual subscription and purchase at least 15 licenses of our software, which is almost close to 6-figure budget, without even demo, then probably it makes no sense to talk. And I was like really crazy. So that's an example of what's happening in the organizations.
Yeah, and I think that, look, you know, we know what businesses are trying to do. They're trying to pre-qualify customers or leads, and that's not a bad thing. But I think that we need to put it on ourselves to try to find ways to make it more convenient and easier on our target audience, you know, because you've got 2 kinds of leads coming in. You've got unqualified leads and you've got the qualified leads. So what are ways that you can, you know, qualify or make it, you know, sift out the unqualified leads while making the experience a little bit easier for the qualified leads? You know, and I think that that's an interesting exercise that'll be different for everyone. You know what I mean? There's technology like data enrichment, you know, real-time data enrichment, where if someone fills out a form, you're getting third-party data to populate, you know, how much revenue the company brings in, what's their employee count, what industry they're in, without having to have them enter their information. You know, it could be that, hey, it doesn't matter who you are. You can see a demo, a recorded demo, a virtual demo of the platform. And then for those people that want to take the next step and that understand, hey, this is this is a premium product, well, then they can take the next step and talk to a salesperson. And so in that way, you're servicing everyone. We're all getting the goal that we're seeking. But then, we're qualifying ourselves, right? Now, that might not be the answer for everyone, and that's kind of hard to do if you're selling consulting services or something. But the spirit of what I'm saying, I think is worth thinking about. How can you make it easier for your target customer to go through the process, and then speak to you when they're ready? So I think that we need to push ourselves to think like that.
Absolutely true. And from my experience, I believe that lots of companies don't understand this, not because they don't want to understand this, but just because of the fact that, first of all, B2B marketing is not taught at schools. So people are not learning B2B marketing. That's the first thing. Quite often executives are coming from sales side or from the tech side, so they don't have this mindset. And quite often they simply don't understand that they are creating this friction point, or they simply don't understand this as a friction point. So my question is, let's say, I know that you're running operations at Amazon, of course, but let's pretend if you were advising any company, how would you go for discovering these friction points and presenting them to the executives, to the marketing and sales team?
Yeah, so I think that, and again, the spirit, the name of the topic of this conversation is reducing friction, right? Or removing friction. So remember that that's what we're trying to go for. We're not saying that all friction is bad, especially when it comes to protecting the customer. But how do you go and identify areas of friction? I think that the first thing you need to do is it has to be a mindset shift. And the best way that I like to think about mindset shift is to take a look at B2C. Some of the best examples of reducing friction and innovation that we've seen is, companies like rideshare companies like Uber, where in the past you had to call a taxi or a cab, you had to pay with cash, you had to tip them, and the introduction of rideshare, Uber, Lyft, et cetera, made it so that all of that was taken away. So that's a fantastic customer experience. Of course, Amazon is one of the best examples of reducing customer friction with one-click buy, buy now button. You just click and all of a sudden it's sent to your house. And so many other examples. In the business space, it's Zoom, which we're on right now. When you're working with Zoom and you go to the Zoom website, there's no friction. You immediately solve your problem. You want to host a meeting, you don't need to download anything. You just enter your meeting ID and good to go. So that mindset shift is I think so important to think about, because your customers have some sort of need or goal that they're trying to solve for. And they want to solve that as quickly as possible, whether that is solving a complex business problem, getting information that they want to know, or buying software. Now, not every company is like Zoom. Zoom is easy to use, and also there's very low cost monthly plans if you want to that you could put on your credit card. So it's not going to be a complex SaaS product, for example, or consulting services. But the important thing is to think in that frame of mind so that you can look at every customer touch point where your customer sees your brand, whether it's on social media, where they come to the website, when they talk to a person, when they request pricing, understanding that they're seeking something and you want to give that to them as quickly as possible when appropriate. I think that that's the best way when you're thinking about external customers to identify these friction points. And then the same can be said, and we can talk about that later, but the same can be said internally too for your internal customers.
Completely agree with you. The question I would like to probably roll in is a kind of broad and philosophic, but anyhow, how to change the mindset of executive sales and get their buy-in to start improving marketing and sales processes, start reducing these friction points. So basically, how can you persuade them that these things are leading to missed opportunities and we need to fix them?
Well, I think that with any of these process changes, and whenever you're doing things, you want to test it out. Okay. And that could be in the form of an A/B test, or that could be in the form of a holdout group, right? And a holdout group means there's a control group that actually is not exposed to the new process. So those are key. Those, I think, you want to lead with data when it comes to introducing these things. One of the easiest ways that I think that a lot of people forget about, and especially when it comes to B2B, to reduce friction, is actually clarity and user experience. Okay, so for example, the first touch point that your customer will probably see is either some sort of landing page or your website, right? So when they come onto your website, can they immediately identify the problem that you solve? You know, is it immediately clear to them what you do and then what that pain point you're going to solve for them is? You know, again, going to the Zoom example, I keep using it again and again because it's just so easy. You go and you know that immediately you want to host a virtual meeting, or you want to collaborate remotely. There's really no question about it. So in the customer's mind, that information is transferred very, very quickly. And then now that there's clarity of information about the problem that you're solving for your customer, next is the UI or the UX, right? The user experience. Sometimes, let's see, we all know these big software companies, right? And their website has, just tons of drop downs, products, industries, solutions, resources, all of this stuff. So the customer is sort of searching around to try to figure out, okay, is this for me or not? You know what I mean? That we're clicking through all the case studies, we're clicking through all the things, we're trying to understand if this is going to solve my problem or not. That's an example of friction. And the solution to that, and there's not a one size fits all, but the solution to that is clarity and simplification of what you solve for the customer. And then it's also personalization. And personalization is a really key thing that I think a lot of great marketers are really looking to improve today, because you can personalize a website based on who the person is. You can personalize an email. So many different types of customer experiences online. You can actually personalize based on who they are. Based on the industry that they are, the job title, the job role, and you can show different case studies, examples, and even copy based on that specific person. And that's a fantastic way to remove friction. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to friction is clarity.
Absolutely true. So basically, this is what I posted today. It was regarding marketing plans and marketing programs that lots of marketing plans are killed in advance just because of lack of clarity, because somebody is coming and saying, okay, let's do demand generation, let's do lead nurturing, let's start content marketing, let's do virtual events, whatever. But then somebody from sales team, especially if this company doesn't have a client-centric mindset, if they all in lead generation mode, they say, okay, so how are you going to generate leads? But they don't really mean the leads. They want to hear how they can generate more opportunities and grow revenue. And then marketer, if he or she doesn't have a clear plan, clear leading indicators that will be leading towards revenue, they say, okay, probably you don't get marketing. So that's one of the most common problems I'm seeing. So completely agree on the lack of clarity. And another question I would like to ask you. So let's say you got the buy-in from the executives. How are you going to report on improvements? What metrics you'll be sharing? What is the right way basically to show that something is going on, that you actually improved specific parts of marketing and sales funnels?
I think it's the key things to think about are conversion rates and then velocity. So that's time to conversion, right? And if you think about the funnel, and then the typical whatever you're using might be MKL, MAL, MQL, SQL, SQO. So you're looking at the conversion rates for each of those stages, and then also the time between, for all the operational folks out there, it's fun to think about how to do that, which is essentially in your system, you are stamping each record when they enter into the next stage, so you can actually measure how fast they're going through. And so once you have those sort of foundational ways of tracking your leads and your leads through the funnel, then it's very easy to start comparing. Now, I do want to caution people when you do that, because some people will sort of make the mistake of just comparing before and after, which isn't the best. You really want to do some sort of A/B test or holdout group when appropriate, because that's how real experiments are run. And that's something that I was actually very challenged with when I came to Amazon, because that's, I was really sort of pressed into really thinking scientifically about how to show improvements, because if you just make a change, there's so many factors that could be that could be changing. Like, for example, I'm not going to go spend too long on this, but let's say you implement a new process, right? But at the same time, you change your branding or at the same time you launch, a nationwide marketing campaign and you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the year, you said, well, look, we implemented this new process and it increased our opportunities by 20%. And unfortunately, that might not be true, right? So I do want to make sure that everyone, it's good to take a look at how you actually run experiments. So I do want to mention that. Now, one other thing that I forgot to bring up earlier is that one of the other best ways in B2B of reducing friction is to also anticipate your customers' questions and your customers' pain points, because when customers come to your site, they're always asking, they always have the same questions in their mind. It's always, okay. Can you hear me? I think we got paused.
Yeah.
You're okay.
Something has happened with Zoom.
Okay. So yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure. So the customers always have the same questions, in their mind as they're going through your website, as they're going through the demo and through the free trial. You know what I mean? And, one of the best things to do is anticipate those questions and then surface the answers right away. And the best example is on your website, because they always want to know what's in it for me and how is this going to solve my problem. So that's the first place. But how about when they're trying your software? If they, let's say, for example, they want to set up and run their first process or workflow or their first project in your solution. Well, what are the most common problems that people come across? Maybe when they get to that point in the trial, it triggers an automatic email that goes to their inbox and says, hey, these are the top 3 things new customers want to know about how to use our service. Here it is. Oh, here's a video showing exactly how to do that. You know what I mean? So looking at things like that, ways to help customers. Here's the great word to think about when you're thinking about reducing friction, and that's convenience. Make it convenient for them to achieve their goals, to achieve their objectives. And there's so many different ways. Such a fun exercise to go through all of the entire customer life cycle and think about that word convenience and making that happen.
Yeah, and I love your intake on sales pipeline velocity, especially when it comes to B2B companies with long and complex sales cycles. It's really difficult to measure the efficiency of a new marketing program. And quite often, the decisions or judgments are done really fast. And this is totally incorrect, because the key point, if you would like to measure, let's say, the first results of your new marketing program, you need to at least wait accordingly to your sales cycle length. If your sales cycle length is, let's say, 6 months, that's a minimum amount of time you need to wait until you'll see the first results. And of course, you need to have preliminary leading indicators that can demonstrate that you are doing the right job, that basically you are going to hit your target metrics. And at the same time, it totally makes sense to track the sales pipeline velocity. As we know, we can influence the number of opportunities. We can influence the average contract value. We can influence the deal close rate. We can shorten the sales cycle. And all of these activities, all these metrics will help us to generate more revenue at the end of the day. And basically, this is because lots of companies just try to measure the opportunities. But the key point, if you'll increase your ACV by 20%, let's say with a launch of new program or reducing specific friction point, that's a way how you can grow the revenue. And unfortunately, so many marketers just simply forget about this. They don't measure this, they don't focus it. And so many of us are still measuring the opportunities, SQLs, MQLs, leads, or whatever we'll call it. So that's another story I wanted to highlight. Another topic I want to talk about today is something that belongs to your actually to your duty at Amazon, marketing operations. And you actually posted a really good thoughts on marketing operations, that marketing operations seems to be very easy. So it just writing some content, making some press releases, slides, tracking the analytics, etc. So on the surface, it looks really, really simple. But at the same time, many companies don't have marketing operations at all. They have sporadic, chaotic marketing activities. And in some organizations, especially with this, let's say, company-centric mindset, marketing, unfortunately, is wearing order-taking hat from, so they basically taking orders from sales and do the stuff executives and sales team tell them to do. So my question is how to start with marketing operations the right way instead of chaotic sporadic activities.
Yeah, and it's my favorite topic. So again, I want to preface this by saying, make sure that we're removing the right frictions, right? And some friction is good. And I have this really quick example. We actually at AWS, we have over 1,000 marketers. And, all marketers, of course, want to get access to these MarTech platforms that we provide. And, we wanted to make it easy for them. So we automated a lot of the training and the onboarding, especially to our largest platform, which is Marketo. And the problem with that, when we automated and reduced friction, what we found was two things. Number one, we got a ton of marketers that were logging into the platforms that didn't really have a purpose. They were just sort of browsing, they were doing like window shopping. What does this platform do? What does this platform do? So half of them didn't even need to be there. And then the second thing was that for the marketers that actually needed to get their work done in these MarTech platforms, because we automated the training, they didn't have sort of a good level of competency and proficiency to actually execute their work in a good way. It actually caused a ton of problems and support issues with people that didn't know what to do. So in that sense, the friction that we removed actually served a good purpose. And so we actually went back to mandatory live training classes that marketers had to attend. And what that did was, number one, it eliminated the window shoppers, right? Because they didn't want to sit through this live class. They just wanted to browse. So it took away all those people. And then it allowed us to really focus on the people that, we're actually doing marketing in these platforms, and to teach them, personally how to do their work. And it eliminated, it produced higher quality and better equipped marketers. So I do want to say that, right? We always have to remember some friction is there for good purposes. Now, now that I've said that, how you look at marketing and try to drive efficiency and scalability is to take a look at a process and try to say, hey, how do we not reinvent the wheel every time? How can we templatize this so that we can run this again and again in a successful way? If you have a template for a successful event, a webinar, for example, or webinar series, there's no reason that you need to start from scratch every time. You know what I mean? You've got, take webinars, for example. It's always very much the same. The landing page is the same. You always have 2 to 3 speakers and you need their images. You always have a registration form. You promote it on similar channels. And then operationally, day of the event, it's very, and post-event, it's very similar. So there's no reason why you should start from scratch and sort of reinvent the wheel and come up with some new stuff every single time. If it's working and it's effective and it's valuable, finding ways to templatize all of that so that you can pass it on. You can have anybody, even less experienced marketers, drum up that event in just a couple hours. I think that that's really the key. So templatizing your work in marketing and templatizing successful campaigns is part one of reducing friction. And then the second is identifying any unnecessary steps within your marketing processes that actually can be removed. And then I'll deep dive into any of these that you want me to. But one final thing that I just thought about too is also enabling self-service is also a great way to improve your operational efficiency in excuse me, in marketing. And the best example that I can think of is, for marketing ops teams, we're always pulling these reports. We're pulling these data reports. For marketers, how did my campaign perform? What's the benchmark? Which are our highest performing campaigns this quarter, right? We're always pulling these reports. Now, instead of doing that on behalf of people and doing it ad hoc every time, why not consolidate and compile all the data into one area and then have a self-service platform like Tableau, other data and analytics platforms where marketers can log in and they have access to the data. They can run it themselves. They can do their own granular analysis, without having to rely on one central team to do that. So self-service is also a big part of removing friction for the marketing team.
And I believe it gives, first of all, it creates transparency. So anybody from, let's say, if we're talking not about the enterprise companies, but SMBs, anybody from the executive team, anybody from, let's say, board of members, anybody from sales can log in and check the data. Quite often there is an issue when, let's say, CEO or CFO requests a report, and it takes time marketing to create this, to present this report, and it's priceless time. So basically we are wasting it. That's the first thing. And basically, if you have this, if you are up to this self-service, everybody can save the time and track the performance in a live mode. That's the first point. The second one is that what you have mentioned, the key idea is basically creating SOPs for marketing. So and documenting all your campaigns with some stats, probably with some benchmarks, setting up, let's say, let's take a precise example. So if we are talking about webinars, this is a webinar that we hosted, let's say, in April. This is how we drove signups. This is the number of signups. This is the attendance rate. This is, let's say, the feedback rate. This is whatever, the inquiries rate or whatever, the activation rate, how you'll call it. And then this is the process we use to drive this registration. If you are using paid, let's say, you can add the images or the banners you used in the paid promotion. You can use the copy, and basically you can share the cost of acquisition or cost per registration, and voila, you have the in-house benchmarks. I believe one of the key mistakes as well is trying every time to beat the industry benchmark. I believe it makes sense to big companies like Amazon, probably, companies that influence heavily the industry, but it makes no sense to SMBs, especially, let's say, if a startup wants to hit the benchmark of HubSpot or Salesforce. Makes no sense, because you're in different situation, you have different resources, you have different brand recognition, whatever. So that's a good story. And let me ask you one more question. What's your process to store all this documentation and share it with your team, and how to involve everybody so everybody will be, let's say, involved in this SOP creation or development?
Yeah, and that actually leads to something that I think is such an important part of reducing friction internally for both your sales and marketing people, and that is, the availability of information when they need it. Because how often is it when a salesperson will come to you and say, like, hey, do we have any case studies for healthcare? Or, have we ever worked with a company like this? Do we have any references? And that question happens over and over again. And having a central, self-service repository or knowledge base for both marketing and salespeople, I think is so key. And internally, of course, you can use some sort of file sharing, platform like SharePoint or whatever your company has. I do think that it will pay off in dividends if your company invests in a knowledge sharing platform internally. At Amazon, we have a wiki that is proprietary, and it allows for almost like an internal Wikipedia that allows for people to comment and ask questions. But just think about that. I think about when your salespeople are on the phone with customers, can they look up information really quickly and be armed with the intelligence that they need to have an effective conversation with the prospect? Can you, when your marketers are in your email platform or in your advertising platform and they are building a campaign, can they quickly and easily multitask and have a checklist on the right-hand side of everything that they need to know, or, you know, reference past campaigns, or have access to creative assets? You know what I mean? Marketing teams have just volumes of creative assets that go unused, you know, images, product images, company logos, you know, all of these creative assets that people can use, but they're siloed because they're in people's computer. You know, they're on their someone's local machine. You know, why not share that so that everyone can almost have a library of creative assets to pull from and then create these beautiful campaigns? Why do they have to start from scratch every single time? I think that those are things that we really need to think about when trying to help our sales and marketing people be more effective at their jobs.
That was brilliant. Thanks a lot for sharing. And let me ask a question, our guys who attended the call today. How did you find this episode? Was it valuable? What are your key insights, takeaways? Or maybe you have questions. If yes, feel free to switch on your camera or just ask your questions in the chat, or just share your feedback with us. And meanwhile, keep in mind that in 3 weeks, we are going live with our Fullfunnel Summit, and Darrell will be one of the speakers at this summit. I dropped the link to the entire schedule and as well a link to the Darrell session, so you can sign up for free. And I hope to see you at the summit, and of course, at the future episodes of Fullfunnel Live podcast. So we are going, before the summit, we'll probably host one more session. And after the summit, we are going to host these calls every week. So see you in the future episodes. And meanwhile, please share with us your feedback or questions in a Zoom chat.